The Industrial Revolution was a transformation of human life circumstances that occurred in the late 18th and early 19th century in Britain, the United States, and Western Europe, due in large measure to advances in technology of industry. The Industrial Revolution was characterized by a complex interplay of changes in technology, society, medicine, economy, education, and culture in which multiple technological innovations replaced human labor with mechanical work, replaced vegetable sources like wood with mineral sources like coal, freed mechanical power from being tied to fixed running water sources, and supported the injection of capitalist practices, methods, and principles into what had been an agrarian society. One of the first innovations of the Industrial Revolution was a system called crop rotation. Instead of using two fields to grow and one to follow, they used a four-field crop rotation. Being able to use all the land instead of parts of it increased the amount of crops they could grow at once, increasing the amount of food and money they could make for their families. Another invention that came along with farming during the Industrial Revolution was the cotton gin. Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin in 1793. The purpose was to make it easier to separate the seeds from cotton. This invention helped improve the production of cotton, making it what was known as a king crop. The steam engine was a key component in the Industrial Revolution. Although Thomas Savery patented the first steam engine, it was James Watt that improved it and made it to what we know today. An interesting fact about the steam engines, they are still used today to help run nuclear power plants. The watt, a unit of power familiar today when dealing with light bulbs, was named after James Watt. He also came up with the term horsepower as a way to explain how much work his steam engines could do for a potential buyer. With the invention of the steam engine, a new source of fuel was needed to power it. Coal mining was used in the Revolution to power steam engines that were invented. It also showed the working conditions and paved the way for new safety and regulations. One of the first forms of transportation incorporated with the steam engine were steam-powered boats. Steam-powered boats helped with the transportation of trade goods as well as a means of transportation for people. The steamboat helped open faster routes of trade between countries and different continents. Steamboats also helped provide canals. Canals were needed for the Industrial Revolution, which was creating huge amounts of heavy produce, which had to be moved. Roads simply could not handle such weights, and the vehicles needed to move this produce was non-existent. Canals were the answer to moving heavy objects large distances. Another invention that came along with the steam engine was the steam-powered locomotive. The invention of the locomotive came to be on February 22nd, 1804. The steam-powered locomotives helped with the faster transportation of people and goods. Steel was in high demand during the Industrial Revolution. This is where steel mills came into play. They played a huge role in the Industrial Revolution and created all the steel that was needed for trains, bridges, and buildings. Metallurgy was discovered during the Industrial Revolution. Metallurgy was a way of forging different elements together to create stronger, harder metals. Most of these metals were used in factories and were needed to make sure that it would last. Electric lighting was also discovered during the Industrial Revolution by Thomas Edison on January 27, 1880. Edison tried many different elements for the filament, many of which did not work until finally he came up with the carbon filament. After a long legal battle, Isaac Singer was awarded the patent over Elias Howe for the sewing machine. The sewing machine made it much easier to put cloth together. Before, cloth was sewn by hand, which was a slow and painstaking process. Although the printing press was not invented during the Industrial Revolution, it was another technological innovation that played an important role in helping Western European societies break the traditional agrarian mold. Printing sped the decimation of both new technological and ideological information and a major factor in overcoming resistance to innovation and change. Other than sending a messenger during the Industrial Revolution, there was no real way to communicate. Samuel Morse invented the telegraph. It was a way of sending and receiving messages over long distances. This greatly improved the way people communicated. Invented in 1844, the telegraph also came up with a new type of language, Morse code, named after Samuel Morse, was a series of dots and dashes that were used to string together words and sentences. After the invention of the telegraph, the transatlantic cable came about. It was a way of connecting America and Europe. It had been a painstaking process, but on the third attempt of laying the 1,686-mile-long cable, it came to be. On August 16, 1858, the first message was sent, making the cable a success. The cable had made it much easier for Europe and the Americas to communicate. Before, it had to be done via messenger. We all know Thomas Edison for creating the light bulb, but did you know he created the phonograph? On November 21st, 1877, Thomas Alva Edison announced that he had devised a method to record sound. The phonograph was a marvel of engineering that ushered in a new era of music, spoken words, and celebrity. Before the invention, music was only heard locally. There was a lot of communication devices created during the Industrial Revolution. None were easier to use than the telephone. The telephone was invented by Alexander Graham Bell. Bell wrote in 1878, "It is possible to connect every man's house, office, or factory with a central station, so as to give him direct communication with his neighbors." The telephone was important because it made it easier to communicate throughout the world, making the production of goods flow easily. Although assembly lines were adopted during the Industrial Revolution, they did not make an appearance into the modern world until after the revolution had ended. Henry Ford was the first pioneer of having people doing one simple task and many tasks in a row to complete an object. Rudolf Diesel made the first working diesel engine on August 10, 1893. The diesel engine would come to be known as the workhorse of engines, eventually replacing the steam engine. It had more power for towing and made it a lot easier on the people who had to operate it. Instead of shoveling coal, all that was needed was fuel. Although the invention of the airplane didn't come around until the 1900s, the inventors of the first airplane were Orville and Wilbur Wright. On December 17, 1903, the Wilbur brothers made the first successful experiment in which a machine carrying a man rose by its own power, flew naturally at an even speed, and descended without damage. This made transportation of goods and people at a much faster rate than previously before. The end.